This video is brought to you by CatBeast.com. Design your own custom snapbacks and hats.
Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed News Corner. Normally we push these videos out on a Friday, but due to a last minute schedule change, this episode is reaching you all on Saturday. I hope you don't mind, and hopefully no massive news stories break between when I film this episode and it goes live. Fingers crossed about that one. Also, it's super cold and windy here, so hopefully none of that gets too annoying in the audio for this episode. Anyway, this week hasn't been particularly busy with news stories, but there's a few interesting things to discuss. Nvidia were briefly able to restock their GeForce graphics cards at the MSRP. Reports suggest Intel have suspended production of their H310 chipset. Valve has a Steam Link app for mobile devices in the works, and more. So let's get right into it. The first story of the week involves Nvidia, and this time it's actually not about the GeForce Partner Program. It seems the company wants to get back on the good side of gamers after cancelling the notorious GPP last week, and there's no better way to do that than to release stock of GeForce graphics cards at the MSRP. The stock hit Nvidia's official online store on May 9th, and depending on the region, sold out pretty quickly as you'd expect. In North America, it appeared cards were still available half a day after the news broke on Nvidia's Twitter. However, a day later and a lot of cards have sold out. As of the time I filmed this news episode, every card Nvidia sells through the website is not available, from the GTX 1080 Ti through to the GTX 1060 6GB. It's worth noting that as Nvidia were selling these cards directly, they were only offering their Founders Edition versions, which launched at a higher price point than the official MSRP. That explains why some cards like the GTX 1060 6GB were available for $299 rather than the mythical $249 MSRP. Other cards like the GTX 1080 Ti and GTX 1070 Ti were priced at the MSRP, as their Founders Edition price was no different to the MSRP. Those that were able to get a 1080 Ti from Nvidia were the luckiest, as Nvidia was selling them for $699, while the cheapest cards at retailers like Newegg currently cost $200 more than that. The GTX 1070 Ti and GTX 1070 were also about $50 cheaper than most cards available at third parties. However, due to the higher than MSRP launch price of the GTX 1080 and GTX 1060 6GB Founders Editions, you weren't getting as much of a saving buying directly through Nvidia as opposed to a third-party retailer selling non-reference cards at an inflated price. Even with Nvidia's latest round of stock, the GTX 1080, 1070 and 1066GB haven't been available at the MSRP for a very long time. I'm not sure releasing a handful of graphics cards that quickly sell out will make gamers completely forget about the GPP, but that does seem to be Nvidia's aim here, as this restocking did occur less than a week after the GPP was cancelled. Unfortunately, it's no longer possible to get most of the cards at or near the MSRP though, so Nvidia's goodwill initiative was a bit short-lived. Maybe if we go back to criticizing Nvidia for the GPP, they'll have no choice but to release more GPUs at the MSRP. It couldn't hurt, right? With that said, there has been a general trend of graphics cards getting cheaper, and even now, many retailers have non-reference models in stock at prices that match or come reasonably close to what Nvidia was offering for a few models. We're not back to the MSRP just yet, but we're getting there, and it's worth looking around to see if you can grab a nice deal, and hopefully third parties can keep their pricing in check for now. Let's move on to the other news stories of the week. According to a video preview from PC World, the hotly anticipated 4K 144Hz HDR G-Sync monitors from Acer and Asus will be available in just 2 weeks. Nvidia did originally say these monitors were on track for an April launch a couple of months ago, but that clearly didn't happen, so maybe this latest tidbit from PC World pointing to a May release is closer to the money. My contacts at Acer and Asus are still suggesting a June launch for these monitors, so that's not quite in line with what PC World is saying. Both Acer and Asus have been firm with their June launch window for a few months now. In fact, they were even saying that at the time Nvidia announced an April release. The whole release of these monitors has been a disaster. Let's not forget they were first shown off at Computex 2016, and it's taken nearly 2 years for launch plans to develop. I'm still not convinced that they will come out in 2 weeks or even June like I've heard, but at least the noise is growing. And as for pricing, it still seems we're looking in the $2,000 to $3,000 US range, so they're definitely not a monitor that everyone will be able to afford. According to a report in the unreliable DigiTimes, Intel have suspended production of their entry-level H310 chipsets. Apparently, there is a shortage of capacity at the 14nm fabs used for producing these chipsets, so the first model to get cut is H310. Intel will continue to produce the rest of the 300 series lineup, including H370, B360, Q360, and Q370, so at least it's only H310 that's affected. Due to the problem, motherboard manufacturers have been forced to use B360 for their bottom-end motherboards instead, which is a more expensive chipset. Apparently, supply of H310 will resume in July at the latest. Considering the way 300 series motherboards are priced at the moment, we probably wouldn't have recommended H310 boards for PC builders anyway, but it will hurt OEMs that like to use the cheapest possible motherboards in their pre-built systems. Here's another rumor mill story that appeared this week. According to Chinese site X-Preview, Nvidia is preparing a 3GB variant of the GeForce GTX 1050. If this card does exist, it would sit between the current 2GB model of the GTX 1050 and the 4GB GTX 1050 Ti that also packs, of course, more CUDA cores. There's no firm word on specifications, though it's likely the 3GB model would feature the same 640 CUDA cores as the 2GB model, just with more GDDR5, of course, and possibly a cut down memory interface from 128 bits to 96 bits. It's also possible this GPU will only be for the Chinese market. Again, it's a very early rumor, so let's see what happens there. This story interested me a fair bit this week. Valve has announced a free Steam Link app for Android and iOS devices that will be released in the week of May 21st. The app will allow you to stream games from your gaming PC over your home network to a mobile device running iOS or Android. Your PC still runs the games, but it then captures essentially a video stream of the game and sends that to the Steam Link app, which in turn sends back control inputs to the PC. Valve first used the technology for PC to PC streaming and then released a standalone device called the Steam Link that you could hook up to a display for in-home streaming at a much cheaper price point. Seriously, you could grab a Steam Link for practically nothing most of the time these days. Now you'll be able to do everything the Steam Link box does with an Android or iOS device for free, which is pretty neat. The Steam Link app will support Bluetooth game controllers, including the Steam controller, so you won't need to bother with awful touchscreen controls. And provided you have a good home network setup with strong Wi-Fi, you'll hardly notice the added latency if you want to do a bit of gaming on your couch or on the toilet. In other gaming related news, a ton of new games were accidentally outed on the Walmart Canada website. It potentially has spoiled some of the announcements we can expect at E3 next month, or it could just be a big bunch of garbage. The games all appeared as placeholders on the Walmart website, and some of which we've heard of before, including Super Smash Bros. For Switch, The Division 2, Beyond Good and Evil 2, and The Last of Us 2. Others haven't been announced yet. These include Just Cause 4, Borderlands 3, Rage 2, Gears of War 5, a new Assassin's Creed game, Lego DC Villains, a new Splinter Cell game, and Forza Horizons 5. That last one seems incorrect, as the previous Forza Horizon game was Forza Horizon 3. In any case, that's a bunch of new games we might be hearing a lot more about next month at E3. Samsung's new 970 Pro and 970 EVO SSDs have hit stores at lower prices than their original launch prices. In some cases, the savings are quite large. The 1TB 970 Pro, for example, is $130 cheaper than the original price, which is a decent 21% saving. The basic 250GB 960 EVO gets the smallest cut at just $10, but the entire lineup has received at least some form of cut. That's pretty great news if you're planning on buying one of these brand new drives, and it brings the pricing more in line with what we expect considering the performance. That's it for this week's News Corner. Next week, we should be back to our usual time on Friday, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss it. Check out CatBeast and use our code HU10 to get 10% off your orders, and I'll catch you in the next one.